On episode 372 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Lisa Davis and discuss her book, Clean Eating, Dirty Sex. As you can imagine, this topic is not appropriate for small children. We don't get into any graphics, but still we are going to be talking about the sex words, so might not be something you want to listen to with the little ones. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/372. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Our guest today is a former sex educator with nearly 2 decades of broadcast experience with both her radio shows and podcast. She is the author of Clean Eating, Dirty Sex. With no further ado, here's Lisa Davis. Lisa, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, Alan, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
You know, your book is Clean Eating, Dirty Sex. And I'll start off with saying it's not so much about the dirty sex, it's just making sure that you are having some, because I mean, we have to face it. When we get over 40, that seems to be one of the areas where a lot of folks struggle, be it ED or just libido. And I think a lot of it traces down to what we've done to either be healthy, to be fit, or to be happy. Because if we're not taking care of our body, that's actually one of the first symptoms. That's kind of one of the first things that seems to want to just conk out on us.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's why I'm so happy with this book, because it's kind of a roadmap in a way. Like, it helps guide you on finding your why and getting the motivation that you need and figuring it out. Because I think if we want to make changes, you really have to have a direction, don't you think?
Yes. And that's what, in my book, The Wellness Roadmap, it's exactly where I start. It's like you have to have a why, you have to have a direction. And a big part of it is just wanting to have a good, happy, healthy, long, fruitful life. And if we're not doing the right things for ourselves, then we don't get there. And that's where I like that you start with the eating part, because I think so many people want to exercise and continue to eat the way they want to eat. They want to live the lifestyle they've been living, and that's not serving them.
No, it's not. And I struggled with clean eating, and I share my experience in the book that I was a dirty eater. I mean, my gosh, the amount of Thin Mint cookies I hid in my room was pretty remarkable. So
yeah, I realized that too. The Girl Scout time,
oh man,
just now passing us as this is going live. But yeah, I don't want to go to the grocery store because they're sitting out there basically drug pushers as far as
I know, and the ingredients are horrendous. Do you think after all these years, like, you can't take out the trans fats? Really? Come on, Girl Scouts.
And I can't not eat a whole roll. It's
exactly.
Put them in individual packets or something, please. But I would sit there and open each one, I'm sure. Can you kind of go through the process and kind of explain, when you say clean eating and dirty eating, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, so clean eating to me is eating foods in their whole form. So a meal that I really enjoy is if I get a little bit of organic grass-fed beef, a big salad, a yam, an avocado, some olive oil for dressing, maybe a little balsamic. That's a really good meal. It's really satiating. You've got the healthy fat that satiates you. You've got the protein from the meat. You've got the good carb from the yam. There's nothing processed in that meal, versus if I'm going to go and get some type of rice-a-roni or one of those types of things where, like, oh, I can add my own meat. It's like, well, why don't you just make your own meat and then just have a huge salad with it, or something else, rather than relying on the standard American diet packaged foods, which are full of just disgusting things and things you can't pronounce and things that hurt your arteries. Because when it comes to sexual health, I'm talking blood flow, Alan. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so I summed it up, sort of clean eating and dirty eating. And when I was a kid, like most kids, they love junk food. And my mother I call her actually my grandmother, we call the original health food nut. And then my mother became a health food nut, and I rebelled in every way possible. And then eventually I thought, wait a second, eating all this junk isn't working for me. So something's got to give.
Yeah. And I just remember, growing up, obviously, I'm the generation when this all started. My father and grandmother, great grandmother, great grandfather, all the folks that I knew from the generations before my mother never had problems with weight.
Right.
But when you went to their house, this was corn that he picked that day, green beans he picked that day. This was meat. This was just, you recognized everything that was in the meal because it came off of a farm, and in many cases his farm. Today it just seems, we've been introduced to this stuff, because if your grandmother walked into the grocery store today, she wouldn't recognize much of what's in there as being food.
Exactly. And it's not. That's what's so sad. Sad standard American diet.
Yeah.
It's aptly named.
Which
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah, and it's like, I like the term you use, is that you're a whole fooditarian, because it kind of
Right.
blanks out the whole mindset of, well, I want to be a vegetarian, or I want to be a vegan, or I want to be a paleo, because in the grand scheme of things, whole fooditarian kind of encompasses all of those.
Exactly. It's funny because I love that term. I've been saying it for years. I should probably trademark it one of these days. But yeah, if it's a whole food, I'm going to eat it. If it's a processed food, I'm not going to eat it. Like, I'm not paleo. I'm not vegan. I guess flexitarian. I mean, there's so many things right now. Although I guess I would say I do tend to go more healthy fat, protein, and lots of veggies. So, but my body just doesn't do well with grains. I'm not telling people to stay away from whole grains. If it works for them, that's great. For me, it doesn't work. But I am saying to people, stay away from the white stuff as much as you can.
I do a thing I kind of call a feasting season and a famine season.
Mm-hmm.
And during my feasting season, I'm okay to have some grains, and I drink beer, and I'll do that during my feasting season. But then when I get to my fasting season or famine season, then I cut all of that out. And what I've found is that grains, I'm going to gain weight.
Right.
If I'm going to do grains, I'm going to gain weight. If I get off the grains, I lose weight. And that's just an experiment that I've done for myself, that I just know that's how I'm wired. Now, I also know that most of the grains that I'm going to get are somewhat processed. So the less processed something is, I kind of think the better it is for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. My husband eats a lot of whole grains, but he exercises like a madman. So he stays fit and lean. And if I ate the way he did, I'd be in trouble. But again, I exercise, but not, it's been 4 degrees here. And he went running. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're going to come home frozen. But anyway, sometimes you can be too dedicated.
Well, yes and no. I think there's kind of this balance in your life, and everybody can kind of find their own balance.
Yeah, I just like to tease him.
But you touched on something that I think is very, very important. He can, you can't, I can't, she can. We're all wired a little different.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, if I ate the grains, I just get really tired. And it's a bummer because I used to love some brown rice and some whole wheat pasta. And I'll have it every once in a while. Like if I know that the next day I have a mellow day, because it kind of gives me what I call a food hangover. And there's a lot of people out there who have headaches or brain fog or sore throats or sinus issues, and they're not really sure. So it's a whole other topic, but I definitely recommend food rotation or just taking things out for a while, taking out the allergenic foods, wait a few weeks and then put them back in. And then when you get a big reaction, you're like, oh, okay, so I don't have to go around feeling foggy headed all the time. I thought this was just me.
Right.
Because that's what happened to me.
So unless you do that, either rotation or some form of elimination for a period of time, you're not going to know those things. And so it's not that we're saying any one food group is not good for you or bad for you. It's just going to be unique to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Except for like the trans fats and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Obviously. And I know you don't. No, maybe. No, I'm teasing.
I do. Trans fats are not whole food. They were man-made, hydrogenated, whatever, that they stay stable on the shelf for a long, long time. And pretty much if it doesn't fade away really quickly, if you can leave something on your counter for months and months and months,
it's not
and
good.
It's still good, it's probably not something you want to put in your mouth unless it's salt.
Yeah.
Now, you tell this story about Betty, and you have your BYOB, which is Be Your Own Betty. Can you kind of tell us that story?
Yeah. So Betty had a friend that she was trying to help. And she's, I think this was interesting. She said, you're staying with me. I'm going to make you your food and you can still eat what you like to eat, but you have to eat what I make you first. And he found that what she made him was satiating and that he felt better and lost weight and eventually moved to that way of eating. And I think by being your own Betty, you need to take the time, like we just talked about, to figure out what works for you, first of all, and then find the foods that are healthy, that give you energy, that make you feel good, that perhaps get you in the mood. We can talk about that,
Yeah.
that later. And I think it's so important to do that because sometimes it's just overwhelming with everything else we have. So I always say, if you can get a little help from a friend or a trainer or somebody, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it probably wasn't for him that big a change. I mean, the first
Right.
couple days probably were a little weird because all of his food's being prepared for him, which wow, that'd be awesome.
Wouldn't that be
She's
great?
a really good friend.
Yeah.
And then just within a reasonable amount of time, he starts noticing changes.
Right.
And then that kind of snowballs because he recognizes that this is working and now he's changed the way he eats.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Like when you feel the difference, it's sort of like with me when I went from dirty eating to clean eating and felt better. And then when I figured out my food sensitivities, I felt so much better. It's like this cloud lifts and you're like, whoa, like I see the light and I can feel good and have energy and want to have sex and just feel better about myself.
Well, so let's get into that. I mean,
Okay.
when we get into our 40s and 50s and 60s, changes are happening.
Oh yeah.
Women probably experience maybe a little bit more of this, but men do too. And most of the men don't want to talk about it because it's just not a topic they want to bring up around their friends. Hey, guess what? I can't do. Um, uh,
Yeah, that's so funny.
so we've got these things in our bodies, these little messengers called hormones, and so there's the sex
Right.
hormones, there's cortisol, and there's thyroid. Can you kind of talk about how those are interfering with our abilities or libidos and all the different things that are going on, and what we can do to somewhat just give them what they need?
All right. So when you're in perimenopause, well, when you're younger, 20 and 30s, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, things are usually pretty, going pretty well. If there's something that's going on, if you're missing periods or there's something erratic, you can, talk to your gynecologist. But for the most part, you're doing pretty well. Then you hit perimenopause. And I have to say, and I share this in the book, it was like a switch, Ellen. It was crazy. I turned 43 and my PMS was insane. Never had it before. I wanted to rip everyone's head off. And I'm like a really happy-go-lucky, like positive
You sound
person.
exactly like my wife right now. She's
Yeah. And my husband and daughter were like, you are a monster. Like, what happened? My libido, which has always been really strong, weakened. My face was breaking out with this like cystic acne on my chin. I would sweat like crazy. I'm like, this is absolute hell. So I went and got my hormones tested and I found out that I had estrogen dominance. Now, when you have estrogen dominance, that's going to cause problems with your other hormones because again, you want to have a balance. So that can be a problem. So when when you have estrogen dominance, this brings in the thyroid. That will affect your thyroid function. It blocks it or slows it down. And then that leads to weight gain, depression, and other things on top of the, wanting to rip everyone's head off and the acne and the sweating. Now I was gaining weight, which I've always been thin. Now I'm curvy. We'll say that. And it was just kind of shocking. I'm like, my pants don't fit. What is going on? So once I was able to get tested, I was able to get a little bit more testosterone, a little bit more progesterone to kind of balance me out. Now, one thing when you're thinking about the thyroid, that's the center of all hormone communication between your brain and your adrenal gland. That has to do with the cortisol, and it manages your stress hormones and your ovaries. And so, if your thyroid is out of whack, which can happen to women at perimenopause and menopause, that's going to make everything out of whack. So you want to get your thyroid checked and get your hormones checked. If you only do one or the other, you might be missing part of the puzzle. And once I was able to I actually do take hormones because when I was 49, I had to have a complete hysterectomy because I don't share this in the book, but I had a cantaloupe-sized fibroid sitting on my bladder in my uterus. And I go to the bathroom enough as it is.
Mhm.
So I literally didn't. It was lucky because I didn't slam right into menopause because I was already taking hormones just a little bit. And then when I had the hysterectomy, they bumped them up a little, but it was really nice. Now that's not for everyone, but that's just something that I do. But I know that there's controversy and there's different things, but they've had different issues with that. There was a big women's study that said they were bad, and then that was contradicted. So again, this is something you need to talk to your own healthcare provider about. But for me, it's been a godsend. But again, that's just for me. We're all different.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point of it is,
Right.
there's so many things that are in your control, like your food, your exercise, your sleep,
Right.
your stress response anyway. Those
Right.
are within your control. And those are the things that you should be focused on day to day. But there are going to just be these things that happen to our bodies as we age that are outside of our control, and injuries, hormones, and those types of things. And so just recognizing that you're going to have to make some health decisions as you go on what's going to be the best path for you, and whether you agree with it or disagree with it, that's your choice. That's your choice to decide how you want to manage your health. And choosing to go on bioidentical hormones is a choice we all have now, fortunately, have an opportunity to make.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are some things you can do food wise. One of the doctors in the book, I mean, I interview over 40 experts, Dr. Stephen Masley. I just think he's fabulous. This is a quote from the book. Guys on an ultra low fat diet can create sexual dysfunction by dropping testosterone levels 50 to 75 percentage points because you need healthy fat. So if you're skimping and you're still doing the low fat thing from the 90s, you got to get on board the healthy fat train because you're going to be hurting your testosterone. There's also things you can do with not spiking your insulin all over the place, which is why you want to stay away from those white foods to keep your insulin more balanced. And that's in that, again, where healthy fat is great, like things like avocado, olive oil, because they're satiating. And I find that to be incredibly helpful when I'm eating. I've been making this really good thing lately of rice cauliflower sauteed in avocado oil, leeks and mushrooms, and then I'll cook yam and I'll add some chicken sausage or a little bit of grass-fed beef, and it's super satiating and it fills me up. It's incredible for hours. It's like, whoa, I didn't even have any grains.
Yeah,
It's really good.
you actually have a recipe in the book that I'm eager to try out.
Oh, which one?
I cooked duck last night, so I
Mm.
couldn't do it this week. But it's the shrimp with cauliflower mash and garlic
Oh,
kale.
that
Uh,
is so good.
that is definitely coming up soon for us.
Oh, good. And the cauliflower mash and the garlic kale goes perfectly with the spiced chicken thighs. That's one of my favorite recipes. Erin
Yeah,
McDonald, who RDN, who did the recipe, she's the nutritionist, dietitian for Clean Eating Magazine, and she knows food and she knows spices. And when I decided I wanted to do a recipe portion, I thought, I don't think everyone wants to just eat my cauliflower concoction. So I went to her and I knew that if I gave her the foods that enhance your sexual health, she'd be able to just do some dynamite things with them. And she did.
there are some really, really good recipes in this book. I can tell you that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they're really, it was very fun making them all and eating them all. My family loved them all too.
Well,
So
good,
that was
good.
good. Yeah.
And so that's what makes this kind of, I really like this book, is because it kind of takes you through the process to say, okay, here's the definition of clean eating. You can do
Right.
this, and here's an approach. It talks about what the benefits are, particularly as you start getting into your overall lifestyle and your health. And it does kind of blend into the whole concept that I have for the show now, which is how do we find wellness? And so with that, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I think the first one is finding your why. You got to find your why first, because if you don't have it, you think, well, I'm going to a high school reunion and I want to look really good. That's nice, but how long is that going to last? But what about I'm at this point, I'm 51, I'll be 52 this year. I want to be functional. I want to be moving around and doing stuff. And I want to be able to feel active and good in my body. And I don't want to focus anymore as much. Not that I don't want to focus on the aesthetics, but I want it to be more about function, right? I see people in walkers and people hunched over that are like 65. And I think, no, I want to be 80. I want to be like those people you see who are 85, like my father-in-law. You know where he is right now? He's 85 years old. This is his 10th year at Red Sox fantasy camp. He plays baseball for a week with guys half his age.
That's
It's
cool.
he still rides his bike around town when it's not 4 degrees, unlike my husband. Um, And that's the kind of thing. So for me, you got to find your why. So that's my why. The other thing is you have to find, I know these are not that original, but this is big to me. You have to find an activity you enjoy. I remember I knew someone who's like, well, I hate exercise. And I'm like, oh, really? There's not one thing you can find that can be enjoyable. Or just take a Zumba class, try a yoga class, try Pilates, there's something called Zenga. There's a lot of different things. And even if you don't absolutely love it, can you see yourself finding something in it that motivates you enough to do it and that maybe you can learn to enjoy it? So try to do it. And then the other thing is to combine an activity that you like while listening to a great podcast like yours. So I have an exercise bike. So I won't ride outside at this point when it's this cold. And I listen to podcasts that I like while I'm riding my bike. So if you can do something you like at the same time. So those are my
Those are cool. Those are really cool.
Thank you. I'm sure.
Now, if someone wanted to learn more about your book, Clean Eating, Dirty Sex, or learn more about you, where would you like for me to send them?
There's two places, if that's okay. You can go to cleaneatingdirtysex.com. There you can get the book. And you can also listen to my podcast, Clean Eating Dirty Sex, which at this point is 99% health because, I mean, the book is, honestly, you could be celibate and still benefit from this book. And then I also have many other shows. I have an NPR show on regional NPR in Texas, and I have a beauty show and a show called Naturally Savvy. You can find all of those at itsyourhealthwithlisadavis.com. No apostrophe, just itsyourhealthwithlisadavis.com.
Okay. Well, you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/372, and I'll be sure to have those links there. So, Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. It was super fun. I'm excited to have you on my shows.
Absolutely. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Kind of a different topic for us, but I think it's important for us to have kind of a good breadth of things here that you can be thinking about as far as your health and fitness and wellness. And sex is actually a part of that. So it was good to have that episode and be able to have that conversation with Lisa. If you enjoyed today's show, I am going to ask you to just do one thing for me. Would you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/AAA, and that will take you to the Author Academy Awards vote page. From that vote page, you can go to the health category, and my book, The Wellness Roadmap, is on that page. You just click on the cover copy, and that will be a vote for me. I really don't want to make the finals. I think this was a great book. I'm really enjoying, the feedback that I'm getting on it. At this point, more than a dozen reviews, and everyone seems to like it. You feel free to go out on Amazon if you've read the book and give me a review. I appreciate that. But I also want your vote for an Author Academy Award. Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/AAA. Go to the health category and vote. 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/AAA. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Dr. Jamie Hope and discuss her book, Habit That. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.